Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Janine Luby. And I am so excited to have this guest because I know you are going to be thoroughly entertained. I think you'll be moved. I think you'll be informed, enlightened. I just think you're going to have a good time listening to my guest this week. I know I'm going to have fun because I always have fun when I talk to Mary. I always have fun when I perform with Mary, and it's just going to be a good time. So I normally, in the beginning, I was just talking to Mary earlier about how I'm failing myself with this podcast. I used to talk about wine, and here it is. We're recording in the evening, and I've been recording a lot of these in the daytime. I'm recording this in the evening and I'm drinking coffee. So I should probably be smacked with 1,000 corks or something. I don't know, some kind of punishment because I should be drinking wine. But in all fairness, I had wine the past 2 nights. So I guess we'll call this my dry night. So I hope you're uncorking something lovely, enjoying it, enjoying the flavors. So my guest tonight is going to, like I said, I know she's going to make you laugh. And well, there I go. And I'm going to get into that in just a second. Mary's going to make you laugh. Mary's going to share a story that I think is important for everyone to hear. October 11th is National Coming Out Day, and Mary is just going to talk to us. So welcome, Mary Rapach. And oh, by the way, check out Mary's comedy. Mary does sketches. She does improv, stand up. Wherever you see her name, Mary's name in the local area of northeastern Pennsylvania, please don't hesitate. Please run to see Mary perform. So welcome, Mary Rapach.
Hello, Miss Janine Luby.
Hello. Hi.
I uncorked for you. See, with my RBG glass.
I meant to say I failed, but Mary did not. Mary is prepared with a red wine. And if you don't mind, because I thought it was a pretty cool bottle, could now the people listening aren't going to see this, but the people who go to check out YouTube, Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl, tell us about that.
So this is 10 Roll Cellars. I don't know. It's a California wine. It is I believe it is the Pride Merlot. So it's Live Out Loud Merlot, which is lovely. It has a nice little spicy finish on it. I just came home from work one day and it was in a box and my sister had sent it to me. And the note on it just said, always be yourself. And I was like, what better time to uncork this?
Wow. That's giving me all the feels. Okay, first of all, your sister's awesome because to send someone wine, that's a great thing to come home to. But I love the note too. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's my oldest sister. So that's pretty amazing.
That is very cool. So Mary, I don't know where we want to start. You are a person who did not live in the Scranton area, although not everybody who listens to this is from Scranton, but I got to meet you because you came to northeastern Pennsylvania. We're fortunate enough to have you. You're involved with Scranton Improv, and I've got to play sometimes, do an improv with you. You've done amazing comedy. So I'd love to talk a little bit about your background with comedy, but we're also going to I want you to have the platform to talk about whatever you want, but to share your coming out story. So where do you want to get started?
Oh, Lord. In 1970s, no.
I was wearing plaid and the Brady Bunch was on.
It was 1987 and I found a skinny tie and a blazer that I could roll up to my elbows and knew I was home. No, I grew up in the Wyoming Valley. Graduate of Valley West, class of 95. Just put the age right out there, no shame. So I grew up in the Wyoming Valley, and then I had gone to college and lived in New York with my brother, who was the most flamboyant human you had ever met. So as soon as I graduated high school and I was 17 years old, moved to New York for 3 years, came back here for a bit to care for my mother after my older brother died. And then was just like, no, I can't do NEPA. Can't do it. Have to leave NEPA. Moved to Tucson, Montana. Landed in Chicago, which is where anyone that has any inkling of being funny and wanting to make that their entire personality, that's just where you have to go. Like, because it's more than just like, oh, I want to do stuff. It's more just like, I want this to be my entire identity. And so my best friend, who also teaches sketch with me, she was like, hey, I'm moving to Chicago next. I'm like, okay. So I landed in Chicago, ended up in Nebraska for a year, which if anyone in Northeast PA is upset about living in Northeast PA, just go to Nebraska.
I was just going to ask you, how did Nebraska follows Chicago? How does that Was that just like
that's a
oops?
lesbian thing. That is a
Okay.
lesbian thing. That is 100% U-Haul syndrome. We're dating for 6 months and either we move in together or break up. And I was like,
All in.
okay, yeah, all in. Cost of living is low. I might get murdered, but also cost of living is low. So yeah. But yeah, if ever
Okay.
you're like driving out in the boonies and you're like, no, I can't take NEPA, just go to Nebraska, like a month, just a month. You will love Scranton more than the Chamber of Commerce.
And for all of my listeners in Nebraska, go Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Go Big Red. Go Big Red.
Yes.
Both
So
of you.
we're
Go
lucky
Big
to
Red.
have you now. That's all that matters. And let me just say, because I am someone who stayed here. I actually have a podcast episode coming up where I talked to Tim Holmes, who's born and bred here, and he was responsible for the office convention. So that's a really cool episode coming up. But we were people who were saying we didn't leave. And sometimes you're seen as a failure if you don't leave.
Yeah.
But I've actually found, and maybe it's because of who I am. We talked a little earlier about my privilege. Maybe because, I got along, like things were fine. I didn't get bullied or discriminated against or whatever. And I mean, again, it's not like I'm not Rockefeller. I'm not setting the world on fire here, but I enjoyed it. My family is important and they're here. And I've made things happen for myself with my business and my comedy. So I've been happy here. But what I'm getting around to is not about me, but I hope you're happy here, Mary, right now. Anyway, I hope it's working better for you this time around.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. It's like I had no plan. I had come back. I was going to take care of my mother and then she passed. So I kind of came back to make sure my father stayed sane, which is really the theme of my whole comedy. If I wasn't laughing, I'd be crying. And who could live like that? But so I came back and I was planning. I had the down payment on the apartment, I had the lease. And then I met my wife at work and the world just became a better place. And it was like it's all about perspective. Like, I think we look at NEPA and we're like, oh, it's awful. It's despicable. It's boring. It's not New York. And it's like, yes, but there is what I discovered when I came back. And especially over like the past 4 or 5 years is that there's so much more here and somebody needs to stay. Like, that's the whole thing is that everybody in my generation, we left. We went to New York. We went to Chicago. And I'm looking at all these young people now and they're staying and they're making it better. Like, you look at Queer NEPA, Rainbow Alliance, all of these great organizations. And it's like, if everybody leaves, who's left to make it better for everybody?
Right. Well, and I mean, and not that I'm looking for a pet, but I mean, I stayed and it's not like I'm one of those people and I have enjoyed it, honestly. Because I see, beautiful parks and I like to run and kayak and support the arts and First Friday. And so I've seen a lot of the good. And I've often, I mean, I used to get on a soapbox because a lot of people would say, what's there to like here? Or it sucks or whatever. And I always said, well, leave. You know what I mean? My thought is if it's not great, you can take a hike and go. Or if you're going to stay here, try to make it good. You know what I mean? Try to make it better. And, I don't want to toot my own horn, but like, I mean, I've done laughter yoga, I mean, that's not exactly a common thing, but why did I do it? Because I wanted to make it happen. So for those people out there who still aren't like loving it here or whatever, either take a little road trip and find yourself somewhere else, or see what's missing that you're really desperate to do and make it happen, or try your best to make it happen. Because, there are Scrantons all over the world. You know what I'm saying? There's, you're going to find, oh, this is an armpit or whatever. Yeah, you're going to find them all across the country, really. So,
but I didn't realize how great it was. Like, even coming back and of course, Nebraska is, except for both of you that are listening from Kearney. I appreciate that. Thank you. But other than the 2 Cornhuskers right now, we'll get it up to 6 by the end of the podcast. And, if there's like a hashtag cancel Janine, that's going to get you viral. So, if we can if you could just get Nebraska mad at you, Janine, I think that's like a headline for a HuffPo. So we could work on that.
Whatever gets me a little notoriety, I don't care.
Or just be like Scranton podcaster shits all over Nebraska. It's like, that's the headline. And then all of a sudden everyone's listening and you win. But
isn't that how it works, really?
Yeah. So you're welcome in advance for shitting on Nebraska. No, but when I moved to like Nebraska, and Lincoln is tricky because it is a beautiful tiny. Lincoln is like if you took Scranton, like the city proper of Scranton, and just put it down and had nothing around it for 40 miles. So it's got the restaurants, the culture, the fun, the movies, the theater, all of that stuff, and you're tricked. And then the next town is 40 miles away. And that's when you start getting followed by men with gun racks. And, but for people that are like, oh, NEPA's terrible, honestly, it is not. It is. And I think I needed that perspective though. Like I needed to go out and be like, oh, this is not, we have seasons, we have trees, we have parks, we have mountains. Like there is so much more here that I think I needed to experience everything else to be able to appreciate it. I think you're lucky that you didn't necessarily have to spend as much time in a car as I did to learn how to appreciate it.
Well, and to that point though, too, I don't get me wrong. I know, and nobody wants to totally like put I don't have regrets, but at the same time, I often do think, well, gee, what if I had gone somewhere? You know what I mean? And, I just turned 50 this month. So it's like, well, actually, oh, geez, it was September. It's already October. So I don't really see me leaving. I mean, who knows? It's not like I'm the lady from the Titanic, although I feel like that many days. I'm not that old. I could leave, but I don't see it happening as I get older. So there are times I do wonder what would have happened if I lived in Philly or New York or something. And that I may never know. But yeah, I am glad that I have enjoyed it my whole life, but I'm also missing what you had, which was seeing living in different areas of the country, which I kind of do envy. I absolutely do. I wish I had that perspective as well.
Do you envy sleeping in the driver's side of an 89 Chevy Cavalier? Is that the part of your story you're missing?
No, nope. Don't envy that.
Because that was probably the greatest part of that whole story.
No, I don't think I would want to do that. I don't need to do that. I'm good.
Okay, you're welcome. Again, I am here for you, Janine. Let my life
making
be
me
your
feel
lesson.
good.
Let my life be your lesson. So you've got, you never moved to Nebraska for anyone you've dated. So again, win-win on that.
So you met your wife, who obviously makes living in Scranton better. You could living anywhere better, I'm guessing, right? Because I mean, I met Kat and I love Kat. I think she's awesome. So
yes, she's amazing. And again, there was absolutely no plan. It was just supposed to be, okay, we'll just see what happens for the 3 months before I move. And then it was like, ooh, yeah, no, I'm gonna have to break my lease. And I happen to have the best friend on earth who was just like, okay, we'll still be friends. I just hate you today. But yeah, I mean, there's no way to leave that. And we're going on, I think 17 years in February. So
wow. Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah. Who would have thought I would have gotten that on Montage Mountain?
Is that where you guys met?
Yeah. Bank of America up on, we met my first day of work. Oh, and then we're just friends for months. But I was like, if I never came back here and started when I started, then my whole world would have gone different. So NEPA has been very good to me.
I do believe things like that happen for a reason. Obviously, you have to go through different things to be in the right place at the right time. So that worked out for you. Yeah.
Yeah, perfectly.
Now, again, I don't want to force a story, but do you have like when you came out, did you would you mind sharing that story as far as like, because I know everyone's story is different. So
my whole thing is, as I said, I had moved from here. Now, if you ask anybody I went to high school with, they would be happy to tell you that they were waiting for me to come out. And there was no one, like I don't have one of those tragic stories where everyone is telling you how terrible it is. It was more like an internal, and also media plays a large part in that. And I tell everyone, look, even if you look at like Modern Family, it's like no one ever portrays lesbians well. Like gay men are fabulous. Lesbians are like the horrible person that ruins the party with hummus, as opposed to a cocktail. So you're just like, I don't want to be granola crunchy. That's not me. Meanwhile, if you're to look at pictures of me from high school, it was like, okay, so the best example I can give you, if I'm talking about, and I know I'm jumping forward, but so when I was 17, I left NEPA, went to college in New York. A lot of people were making newer friends, and I made some great friends in college, but also on the side of that, my brother is 10 years older than me. So I had this fabulous gay man At 27, and all of his friends who had adopted me into their fold, and they kept calling me Peppermint Patty, and I'm like, oh, absolutely not. I like boys too. And so that was like my social experience, and I had no concept. Like I thought I was going to be a nun until like college. And even after I came back from New York, like my mother was still getting the, so you want to join the clergy, like the mailings. Because I think I had that thing hit me when I was like in middle school, that I thought I was different. But because I was so very religious, like I taught Bible school, and my mother was our church director of religious education. And so I taught kids classes, Bible school, Sunday school. I would work with the special needs kids for CCD. And so I just, all of a sudden one Sunday I had this thing, and I just broke down in tears. And I just went down and I told my mother that I had my calling, which I realize now that at 14, it was probably just me just being like, oh, I'm not like these other kids. But in my head, that was the Lord telling me that I was different. And I had played, so I started learning guitar because I wanted to be the fun nun that played guitar. and I am neither a nun nor can I play guitar, but I tried.
You had the intention.
Yeah, I had the good intention. I was going to dance. I was going to be like Maria von Trapp, but without the marriage at the end. That was the plan. And so like that was my socialization. Every friend, like I went to proms and stuff, and as it turns out, shocker, the guy I went to my senior prom with was gay, but he and I were in the same musical. He sang and danced far better than me. But yeah, all of my friends were just like, oh my God, you're so gay. I'm like, I'm not gay though. So I went to college. My mother told me 3 things: don't do drugs, don't get a tattoo, and don't be gay. Okay. Those were my rules. So I'm like, okay. So I went to college, never thinking of it. And again, this ties into the expression of gender, because I was really trying to be the same as like every other girl. And I thought that had part of it, like to do with it. So, I'm trying to catch up with my friends, and I was on an episode of Ricky Lake when I was 17 that I faked my birth certificate to get on, which is a whole other thing. But I was going on Ricky Lake, and the theme of the show was Ricky helped me meet my favorite soap star. And so 17 years old, pretending to be 18, going to meet a guy from another world. I think his name is Grayson McCooch. So
I never watched that show, but
yeah,
I love the name.
Somebody Google him. He was very adorable,
McCooch.
but I had only done the show because I had heard a producer say they didn't have anybody that loved him. And I'm like, this will get me on TV. So I professed my love for this guy. The producers booked me on Ricky Lake, and I'm like, what do I wear to reflect my love for this gentleman on Ricky Lake? And my outfit of choice was a blue denim shirt, brown jeans, a green rayon vest. I know, control yourself. This is very exciting. And boots. And I can't understand why Ricky Lake treated me as if I was not truly in love with this man. And I'm like looking at this, and I'm like, why did everyone say I was gay? I hate to be a stereotype. I know we're like, everyone can be gay. Yes. And Katerina, my wife, as you know, is beautiful and feminine, and absolutely would have never worn that outfit. But that was the girliest thing I can pick at the time to profess my love. So the whole world, all my brother's friends calling me Peppermint Patty, all my friends in college are just like, gay's okay. And I'm just like, gay men are wonderful. I hate lesbians. So I just had this weird thing in my head that just lesbians are boring and dull. And so I just went through life that way. And also they were supposed to hate men. And so I had like wonderful relationships with guys. So I was just like, I didn't think they were like, I thought they were good looking, but I wasn't like, that guy's hot. But I'm just like, I don't get it. Like I like them and we get along really well. And I had no clue, none. Like everyone else on earth, if you would have asked anybody that knew me, they would be like, oh yeah, totally gay. And so I went to Tucson, which my best friend, again, since freshman year in college, Leslie, is, she's like, well, if any place is going to make you gay, it's going to be Tucson. Like that was like the lesbian haven of the world. Like everyone wears sandals. We all love indigo. It's like you have
I
to
was just gonna
buy.
say the Indigo Girls is piped in
Mhm.
everywhere, pretty much.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, you have to like pick up a copy of Dorothy Allison and the Indigo Girls box set, and know at least 3 Ani DeFranco songs.
Now
Um,
I've gone to see both of those in concert, Ani DeFranco 2 or 3 times, and the Indigo Girls. And I have had girls hit on me,
mhm.
and I think I don't know. At 50, I'm still
Take it as a
open. Is all I'm
take it
saying.
as a compliment.
I always
Well,
have. I'm like, hey,
yeah.
you like me? You have good taste. Good for you.
Well, and I went to an on back when they at the Harvey's Lake Amphitheater. So I was
Yes,
working
that's
at
where I
Gallery
saw
Sound.
Ani. Yeah,
So we were
and
in the
in New
same
York
spot.
City at the Central Park. My friend
Nice.
was going to NYU at the time. She was cranky that night. Like she was kind of bitchy, but Harvey's Lake was good. I'm sorry, I don't want to take
No,
away from the story here.
she was mad. She was mad, and Harvey's like there was a whole bug thing that she was like flipping out over. But the best part was that what were we like 21 at the time? I was like 21 when that show came on, and I saw people from high school I hadn't seen for years. And I shit you not, one of the women from high school saw me and was just like, "Oh my God, Mary! I always thought you were Ani DeFranco fan." Because I was when she said I always thought you were, and I was like, "What? You thought I was what?" Like horrified. I'm like, I'm listening to Ani DeFranco and I'm wearing actual Birkenstocks. And I'm like, I don't know why everyone thinks I'm gay. So I made it through Tucson. Again, completely. That was like Tucson was where it started. Like I just assumed guys didn't like me because I was fat. And again, if you look at me in my 20s, I was not. I have earned my girth. But back then it was just I assumed I was. And so just my thought was, okay, here is my shot. I'm not near anybody where I'm going to be girly. So that was kind of like my shot at 21 years old. I started biking 30 to 40 miles a day, um, developing a very healthy eating disorder, as one does in their early 20s, and got slender, had my hair long, learned to do the makeup, dressed like a sorority girl. And I still was just like, something about this just feels weird, but I'm fine. And it wasn't until I got to Chicago and I was there for like a year and I discovered the internet that it was all of a sudden I was working on different writing groups and then just happened to connect with somebody. And then that was when I was like, oh, gender doesn't matter. Let's see. And then I met somebody online that I was like, okay, well, let me just see where this goes. I didn't tell anyone. I think it was like what old school, like MSN chat room. And it was literally just like for writers. And then after a while, we're like, yeah, we need to meet each other. And so we decided they were from Baton Rouge. I was living in Chicago. We decided to meet in Memphis. And I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. The only person on earth I told was my best friend. Like I was on the phone with this woman every day. And just like being like, this is so weird. This freaked out. I don't want to tell anybody. What if everything is true? I went to Memphis and it was like out of like a movie, like rain and just like romantic and all of us. And it was just like that second where it was just like, oh, oh, okay, okay. So all of the girliness that I tried to do, it didn't matter. Like I couldn't be girly enough to push that away. So that's so I think I was 24 at the time, which
Mm.
nowadays is like old. Like back in the day, that was young, but like now, like kids are coming out in high school now. So
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if it's, excuse me, Mary, generational or not, but my friend Oliver, who I recorded, and his podcast aired on October 7th, he shared his coming out story, and I've known him since he's 14. And as I'm listening to you talk, it's similar with him in the fact that he never thought of himself as gay. In high school, like myself and a couple of our other friends, like he listened to Madonna, he wore like pink shirts.
mhm.
And now this is all stereotyping. I know that. And I
Yeah.
mean, you're not supposed to do that. But I mean, we were like, oh, and he'd date girls and we're like, isn't he gay? So he had even said when we had our conversation, he's like, well, you guys probably thought I was. And we did. And he went on to get married. He has a son who's in his 20s, and like he said, he doesn't regret a thing how it came out, but he never thought of himself as gay. And I think he was, I want to say 26 or 28 when he came out, because he had been married and he finally realized it wasn't, wasn't for him. Like that wasn't working for him.
Yeah, like at a certain point, you give it the old college try. And so, I mean, I still had the 3 rules of what not to do. Now I had already gotten a tattoo, and I have never done a drug ever, Janine, ever in my life.
Whoa,
Ever.
all right.
But so I'm looking at it, I'm like, all right, so those are that my mother knew of. So I was like, all right, so I'm already, I had gotten the shame because I had gone home for a first Holy Communion, and I had a tattoo on my ankle, and that was like the worst thing that could have happened. So there you go. It was already 1 out of 3. But the thing about Chicago is like, okay, so I had discovered this woman who, again, it was for both of us, it was a learning experience. And she too, it was like she was coming out, so we both were like, yay, this is wonderful. But like all of a sudden somebody just opened, it was like the Wizard of Oz. Like you just walk through and you go from sepia to color, and you're just like, oh, this is what everybody who's happy is talking about. I get it now. And the thing though that really pushed me over the edge to help me realize that it was more than just like, because I tried that whole, it was just that one person, like I just fell in love with that one person who happened to be a woman, is in Chicago is something that I don't know if it even still exists since Pope Benedict, but this was like 2001, and it was in Chicago, it was called a glow in this fabulous church down in a section of Chicago called Boys Town, which is kind of like the West Village of Chicago, Halsted Street. And it was the Archdiocesan Gay and Lesbian Organization. And every Sunday they had a gay mass. And so I just went, and I had gone there on my own because I didn't have a lot of Catholic friends in Chicago. And so I was just like, let me check it out. I found it on their GeoCities website. Let's see what it's all about. And it was like being welcomed home. Like the church was filled, and the people there, like I was the youngest one there. They were all in their 40s and 50s. And, kind of seeing that section, like, okay, you can marry this part of yourself that believes these things with this person who you are, and seeing all these happy people. And the greatest thing is something that would never happen now was the priest saying he was gay. Because again, Pope Benedict kind of closed the door on all that. So I do wonder, like, had I been slightly younger, I don't know, and with otherwise similar experiences, I don't think I would have gotten that. And when I finally came out to my parents and they came to visit me in Chicago, I took my parents to that mass, and everybody there was like blown away because my mother was adorable. And they were like, oh my God, is that your mom? She's so cute. And my mother was just like, every mass should be a gay mass. This church has the best music I've ever heard in my life. And I was like, yes, because we gave it to the gays. She's like, can we have gay mass where we are? I'm like, you go ask, Mom. Let me know. Let me know what St. Let me know what St. Hedwig's has to say about that. But
that would make mass more fun, I would think. I'm sure it's got to be spectacular.
Oh yeah, the readings were on point. The music was perfect. The people in the pews were harmonizing. It was beautiful. It was like everything you want of like that combination of experiences.
Yeah.
And that kind of gave me the courage to then be like, no, this really is who I am. So I guess I got to tell Mom.
Now, let me ask you, Mary, you mentioned the mass there. I know to refer to my friend Oliver, and again, his story, everybody has a different experience. He is really, let's say, not a fan of the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
For him, he's kind of repelled it, and just, do you still have, what is your relationship now? Do you still attend mass, or do you feel more just spiritual? I mean, what is your experience now, or how do you feel about it now?
I stopped attending mass because of Pope Benedict. So like, even after I came back, after my mother passed away, I would actually drive because I preferred the mass. I lived in Kingston, and I would drive up to Scranton and go to St. Patrick's. And I went to mass until Pope Benedict, and then when he came, I'm like, why would anyone, with all the problems there were in the church, and if you get something out of it, that's wonderful. But I'm like, with all the problems there are in the world and in the church, are you just going to be like, oh, we're going to pick this particular group that's an easy target and tell them not only are you going to hell, but there's no redemption to where you can participate. So it's like, even though Francis has done some things, he really did not come back from where, the depths that Benedict pulled us to. Because again, that moment I had in a glow, that wouldn't exist in Pope Benedict's world. So Ratzinger really was just like, oh yeah, no, any progress, any hope for, building communion? No. And I went to a service actually a few weeks ago, and it seems to me like, when there's the opportunity to make a connection, and they're wonderful, if you get something out of religion, get what you can. And like, again, there are wonderful, and here in Scranton, they're absolutely wonderful, welcoming churches. And for somebody who's on the fence, I would say, check out Mother Barnes and St. Luke's, because she's one of those people to me who I don't interact with regularly, but like, literally, if you're looking for a reason, when you get like bogged down in that, like, religion is the root of all evil kind of mindset, which is so easy to do when you're in a certain type of minority, it's very helpful to have somebody that you just see out in public who literally is like walking on a daily basis that path that you expected and were taught should be what your relationship with God is.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. I appreciate your response too, because not, like with my friend, he's kind of in the hates the church mode, you know what I mean? But again, kind of for the reasons that you said, but to your point of like, well, if you get something out of it, great. You don't need to attend mass to have a connection with God, obviously. But if you find a place where you feel welcome and comfortable, like, that's all more power to you, right? You have to do what's comfortable for you, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. And there are, like, when I worked with Queer NEPA, there are churches in Northeast PA that are welcoming. People just have to, reach out and find, if what you want is that relationship with God through Christ and Christianity, there is a home that can be found. I myself have found more of a personal spirituality, still occasionally say the rosary on a rough day. But am more a fan of the Church of Sondheim for a rough day than going to mass.
Yeah, and that's understood. I mean, I was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school, kindergarten through 12th grade. I went to mass. I was a lector. I volunteered at the church picnic for 20 years. And I probably, let's see, I turned 50. I probably stopped going maybe 15 years ago or so. And at first, I remember it did, God love him, it upset my father in the beginning. But he's gotten over it. He got over it, pretty relatively quickly. But what used to bother me, and again, I think it's important to know too how every church is different. I mean, you have the church, like the church, but each church, the priests are different, right? So you might find a priest that you love and you can relate to and you can talk to, and then other places you might feel completely uncomfortable. I would really get annoyed when I'd go to church and I'd hear the pastor say, his sermon or his homily, and he'd say, oh, but you don't need me to tell you, you're the good ones, you're here.
Yeah.
And that would send me through the roof, because I'd be like, all right, I'm done, because I had done it all my whole life as far as attending. And I know people who would go every week, like one woman I worked with at Blue Cross, but she was the biggest gossip. And just because your ass is in a seat every week for an hour does not mean you're a good person, And so for me personally, I've stopped going, but I find God every time I look at a sunset, when I'm out running in nature and I have a feeling. And I don't know why I'm like, oh, here's my story, but that's my relationship after no bad experience, just wasn't getting a lot out of it. Although I will say, when I do occasionally still attend mass, I like the singing. Like for me, there's a sense of peace and spirituality with the singing and everything, but you have to find your right place and what's right for you.
And it is hard for queer people because of, there are mixed messages. And as you said, it depends on where you go. And it's very difficult to say, okay, well, I found this one priest that allows me to go and allows me to be myself and expresses. And there are some priests that, and Pope Francis even said, baptize the children of LGBTQ plus couples. But to have the main message across the board from any one religion, whether it's certain breeds of evangelical or Catholicism or whatever the brand is, it's like that message that you're getting that you're not enough. And my mother struggled with, and we had that conversation. She passed before, unfortunately, she passed before ever meeting Katerina. But we had this discussion before she passed where she even said, like, I don't know what I would do if you want to get married. And she was open about that. She had said, I don't, she's like, she was the old school, love the sinner, hate the sin. But I also see how other people have evolved. And I would, knowing her personality, expect her to have, like my father came to our wedding. My 85-year-old Aunt Patsy, who is equally as devout as my mother, adores Katerina, and yells at me whenever I don't bring her along with me to go visit her. Like, where's Kat? And Kat's kids, my wonderful stepkids, how's Chris? How's Samantha? Like my great aunt, like, so I look at it, I'm like, if my 85-year-old Aunt Patsy is okay with it, like everybody has kind of moved, and it's almost like the goalposts have moved, but the rule book hasn't changed. And something about that is incongruous.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up too about your aunt, and you're saying your dad, because I think it's, and we'll get to this. I want to shift in a minute about like pronouns and everything. Like, I feel sometimes that younger people are a little like they want things to change quickly, and maybe it's because I'm older and curmudgeonly, but people can change. Like, it might take us time. Like some
Mhm.
people so I guess my point is like, I feel like sometimes the younger people are like, this is how it should be, this, and I get it,
Mhm.
but I don't, I guess my point would be, don't think that we're, certain people are hopeless because they're not there yet, right? I
Yeah.
think education and having conversations is important, but don't write us off like, oh, okay, boomer, okay, this or that, because I'm not a big fan of, of that, like dismissing people because they're older or whatever. Because given time, like, we just need conversations, and I think people can come around, and people need to be educated. People need to get used to ideas. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's kind of like we can't change overnight, and we can't get used to something that we're not familiar with overnight.
And I think that there has to be, I like that you're bringing up, and for anybody that's a Patton Oswalt fan, there is, and I can't remember what special it is, but he did this amazing bit, like a part of his set, a 10-minute bit about language, where it's like, do you want the person that says everything right but is trying to take away your rights but refers to you correctly? Or do you want the guy that may accidentally say faggot but doesn't care if you're getting married and is voting for the candidates that are supporting your rights? And I think sometimes, and the social media age, we're awash in people that agree with us. So then we tend to think that, okay, if this person doesn't think the way I believe, like my perspective of sexuality, gender, expression, then they're a homophobe, they're a transphobe, they hate us. And I'm like, looking back just in, my 40 some odd years of life, the whole world has changed. Like my brother, again, he walked the road before me. He came out in the 80s when, I remember members of our family joking about not drinking out of a can from him because of AIDS.
Mm.
Now, first of all, you can't get AIDS from a can, but also literally just the fact that he was gay meant that he was going to get AIDS. But it's like thinking of the stuff that he and his generation went through in the 80s. I didn't have to deal with any of that. So they'd be like, they would look at us and they're like, really? Like, come on now. Like this is what you're getting upset over. Like you're getting, now it's at the point where it's like, we fought so hard for marriage rights, and we absolutely need to keep fighting because, our transgender and gender variant siblings are struggling, but focus on the struggle, not on the language. I'm not somebody who believes that accidentally calling me she is an act of violence. Like, I got childbearing hips. I got 42 double D's. Like, I get yelled at bathrooms if they look at me from behind, and then you look at me from the side and I look 6 months pregnant. Like, my physical frame is that of, a Eastern European midwife. Like, without surgical intervention, that is my frame. I've got the parts. I'm not going to get upset. And my experience, like, I was born and raised female, and I think we need to examine that too. Like, my experience, and that's why I don't mind like doing women's comedy nights, because my experience is the same. It's fun because I'm a little bit of both. I could be the stupid, I not could be, I am the stupid husbutch, as it is in my house. So it's like, I am the stupid clumsy husbutch that doesn't know where to find their keys. That stereotype is 100% true. But also, I have cramps and I want chocolate and a bottle of, like, so it's like, I get to meet in the middle. So I'm not offended, but I also am lucky enough that I've done a lot of queer activism. I'm not as active now as I was, but I also think there has to be something said about being queer in straight spaces. Like, I've done great example. I did that show with you at the winery for last Valentine's Day. And what was really funny is that, everyone is expecting female comedy, and the wonderful men you had. But when it comes to that sort of audience, they're thinking like woman centric, let's do our female stuff. And so when I approach an audience like that, it's great because they're just looking at me like, who is this dude girl? Like, looks like a dude has the voice. Yeah. Like, has the voice of a girl. What are they going to bring to me? And it's like having that ability to be queer in straight spaces, regardless of whether the host of the show introducing me says they or she, they're getting my perspective where they might not otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, this is a conversation I keep referring back to my friend Oliver, because he's the same age as me. He's actually a couple months older. And he feels like I'm an old gay. I don't even get all this younger stuff. Like, we've talked about it. And one of my friends, like I said, she's more immersed in what's going on with the younger generation because of her daughter and her daughter's friends. And I hate to come off like I'm an old curmudgeon, but as I talked about with Oliver, we were both saying about the, like, he, she, or, and identifying with the pronoun and the they, and I'll admit, I'll cop to this. I said it in the other podcast. It's not that I'm dismissing the person's intent. Like, I respect someone's intent and if I'm getting this correctly, they don't feel they identify as female or male, or else I guess you'd choose a pronoun of he or she, or you don't like what that pronoun means. I'm not really clear, but the they, when I hear it, because I said I'm a word nerd, I hear plural. and for me, I have to think, well, is it because these are the only words we have to work with? Because I can't imagine that they is somehow magically, exemplifies what the person's feeling, or, you know what I mean? Like, how to identify, like, I hear plural when I hear they, and it gets confusing for me. And we talked earlier, like, I want to respect they with you, but I also find myself saying she. And I instantly feel bad because I know that I'm trying to respect, but it's a little bit tougher. So it's a challenge, but it's that understanding. So I don't know.
I understand the concept of the plural they. I think the easiest way to look at this, and I did see a meme about this, is this is not me, but it's just like, if you find a wallet on the street and there's $100 cash in it, and it has no ID, and it has other information in it that somebody would want to have, you're going to set it aside in lost and found, and you're going to say, somebody lost their wallet. If they call, verify this. Like, it's, if no gender is implied, the singular they is easy for us to use. So that's one thing I would challenge you on, is that there are tons of times in your life you've probably used singular they, but yet it's like a barrier because we're so used to just using he, she. Yeah. Now, again, being a curmudgeon myself, then when you get into Z and her, HIR, and woman with the Y, and if that's what you want, I will do everything within my power to do it. But I also, as a word nerd, at a certain point, you're just like, Can we have like, I like he, she, they just because it's easier? And there's, and I am not as strict about it, but for those who are, like my niece, they are, they just, if ever you want to talk to a brilliant young person, they are a genius, just graduated as valedictorian of their college class. And it's very interesting, but I even find myself referring to them as her. And it was their brother and sister, my other niece and nephew, that I noticed when I posted all of these, that I'm sure you've seen them on Facebook, my bragging posts about them. I put she, and then I noticed that that their siblings posted that, and I'm like, oh my God, I missed it. And that's my godchild.
Yeah.
And I am genderqueer. So don't put too much, pressure on yourself. Cause if I jack it up.
I guess, and I'm just trying to like, okay, so the grammar part, I can get over. It's like to me, it just seems wrong grammatically, but I guess I'm also trying to understand, and I don't want this to come off like in a negative way, but is it, and again, because I'm 50 and I'm an old curmudgeon, is it the youth trying to like make their mark? So this is it, or what does it actually mean? I guess I'm trying to understand it. Is it mean I don't, the person does not identify to the patriarchal or whatever, this has been identified as male or female, I reject that? Is that kind of, I guess is that what it's meant to be? I guess, I don't know. I don't fully understand.
I discovered it in my mid-20s because, and I had sent you, this brings us into that picture I had sent you before. So when I was joking before, I had my year of being a drag queen. So I was just like, again, my thought was, if I was going to be gay, I didn't want to be a stereotype, the same stereotype that I was, that made everyone think I was gay. So I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm a lesbian only because I like wearing comfortable pants. Like, I'm going to be like, I'm going to be the girliest lesbian you have ever seen. My hair is going to be fabulous. I had a very good paying job at the time. So it was like, I'm going to buy MAC cosmetics. I did not wear heels. Literally, it hurt my feet when I stopped wearing heels. I did not wear anything less than 3 inches ever for like a good 2-year period. And I just went all out. And it was almost like the last gasp of like, if I'm going to be a girl, this is going to be me trying to be a girl. And so I did, like, right out of the gate. And then all of a sudden I had started making more friends and was really taken under the wing of a lot of like through, and again, online. It was funny because in the early 2000s, like nowadays, if you say that you've got friends online, people are like, yeah, whatever, that's how we live. But I had met this wonderful group of women and folks that in Chicago and who were coming into Chicago for Pride. And so we would like have like brunches, and they were all like in their 40s, which for me at the time at 25 was just like, oh my God, they must know it all. But so, and they kind of took me under their wing, and I started seeing like the butch femme dynamic, which, coming out of like the grunge in the 90s, there was that whole thing like labels are for soup cans, don't tell yourself what you are. And it was like, and I started seeing this community that had this dynamic where there was a masculine energy on one side and there was a feminine energy on the other side. And I started looking at it, and a lot of the stuff from my childhood and like how I was and how I interacted with people started to make sense. Like and again, I was always a tomboy. I wasn't sporty, but I was a tomboy, and I was always more just like a gay man than I was, a straight woman. So it would be like, okay, if I thought a guy was good looking, it was aesthetically pleasing, but I had a masculine kind of sense about it, which is also why I probably had such good guy friends. And so I started discovering this butch femme dynamic and talking to people across the country and meeting with all of these people. And the phrase gender queer came to my attention. And I had never heard it before. I was 25 at the time. And I'm like, wait a second. Because first somebody said GQ, and I'm like, that's me. I love wearing fabulous attire. And I at first I associated GQ with, the ties, the vests, being a dandy. And I'm like, that's me. I'm a dandy.
And dandy.
Yeah, I still like to be a dandy. But so, because again, my thought of butchness and masculine femalehood has always been like your mullet, like look John Madden looking like eagles, like a gold Eagles pendant, and we've all seen them. And so that to me was what I associated masculine womanhood with. So then I started interacting with these people and I'm like, well, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So for me, it was like that understanding that that masculine side of myself could exist with the physical femininity. So,
Okay.
and the easiest way I've found to describe myself, and again, this is only for me, is that I'm like, I'm not fond of the plumbing, but I don't want to gut the house.
Oh, geez, I don't know if I've ever heard. Wow, that's a really good way to say it.
So it's like, I don't want to transition, but I am happy in my masculinity, my energy, especially with Katerina, we play off of each other in that way. And some people may say it's heteronormative, but I scream like a girl at a spider. And, so it's like, and it's realizing that the construct of gender is what we were taught, because it was up until middle school, I was 100% free to be me. And up until sixth grade, because sixth grade, my brother bought me this outfit for my sixth grade dance. And I saw my yearbook and I was rocking the red turtleneck and the black vest and, the black 80s chest king dress pants. The ones.
Chess King. Oh
Chest
yeah.
king dress pants. This was 1989.
They like Z Cavaricci's?
Yeah, like if I could have worn a skinny tie to the dance, I would have, but I didn't. So I had a red turtleneck instead and my short hair. And I went to that dance feeling like the coolest kid in history. And then when puberty hit everyone else, something changed. And it was just society saying to me, you have to be a girl now. And that's when it was like there's this picture of me from 1987, of course, where I was joking in the beginning where I had stolen my brother Chris's stuff and I had a mullet because it was 1987. And regardless of gender, you had to have a mullet. That was the law. You're thinking you have that picture, don't you? You had a mullet.
I sure do. I had a tail. Do you remember the tail?
Yes, I did not, but I'm proud of that.
I did.
Well done. But yeah, so it's 1987. Mullets were the law. I found my brother's sport coat, so I rolled up the sleeves. I took his chest king tie. I'm walking around the house, and of all the pictures of me and I never looked happier in my suit and my tie and my mullet, which I'm embarrassed by because it was a mullet, and that should not bring anyone joy ever.
No, it shouldn't.
Can we make that a PSA right now? Because they're coming back.
If you wear a mullet, please bury your head in the sand. You should not be walking around proud as a peacock. No
Thank
way.
You. Brought to you by Funny Wine Girl. The more you know.
The more you know. And hey, never go to Nebraska.
Yes. Well, then the mullet would fit.
So yeah, that is true.
If you have a mullet,
the home of the mullet. Oh my God.
Yes. Yeah. If you have a mullet, bury your head in the sand or move to Beatrice, not Beatrice, Nebraska. But yeah, so I mean, like there was that moment where it's just like, here's your girl time. And I was so bad at being a girl that I just gave up and let my mom pick my clothes. And if you looked at anyone that looked at me aside from like, when I was in casual wear, every outfit where I had to dress up came from the Boscov's Women's World section. Because I was a size 14 and there were no like plus size anything. So it was Women's World. So I dressed throughout high school as a 45-year-old soccer mom. Like the dresses remember the dresses with the vests on
shoulder
them?
Pads, maybe?
Yeah, shoulder pads. Tons of different blends of rayon. Like my entire high school career was just like all Boscov's, all Women's World. It was awful. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, this is a thing I can be. And I went and people thought I had a nervous breakdown because I like I was reading back and forth and people didn't know, like there was nobody back then to talk to about it. All my friends were like my friends that went out with me trying to find guys. So they were just like, oh, Mary's bisexual now, whatever. We'll just go out on the weekend. So I had gone one weekend and everything I owned like from that period, because I was trying. So everything I owned came from Ann Taylor. or New York and Company, those two stores. That's it. And shoes were all Nine West. Makeup was all MAC. And one day, like, it just hit me. I just woke up, and this is after, and I have to say, this is after I had done a play that I had written for a character I had written for myself, where the director told me that I walked too butch to be the character that I had written for myself. Because it was true. It was a mother. And I'm like, how dare you say this horrible thing about. She was 100% right. We're obviously still friends to this day, but how dare you call me butch? So then just one weekend, I'm like, you know what? Let's just go for it. And I had gone to, and Chicago has the best thrifting. And I had gone to the store, and I had gotten tons of business casual wear and old fun, like work shirts. And again, much younger, much thinner. I could buy things off the rack at that point, and just went to the salon and had them cut my hair off. And I had my hair was like down far below my bra strap, and they kept telling me they didn't want to do it. I'm like, no, I'm good. Trust me, I'm good. Are you sure? I'm like, just do it. I don't want to do every 2 inches at a time. I left that place. I went into work on Monday, and they all thought that I had a nervous breakdown. But somebody lucked out at that Salvation Army when I donated all of the Nine West and Ann Taylor. And so some pudgy girl cleaned up. Some size 14 woman that didn't find any work. If I knew about places like Dress for Success, then I probably would have been a little more targeted with my donations. Yeah. But at the time, I was just like, womanhood, giant bag.
Here, take it. I don't need you
anymore. Take it. I don't need you any. And that was it. And when I had come out, that was the thing, is that I had gone home, and I had talked to my mother a little, and that was I'm like, Mom, I need to talk to you. I was terrified. Mom, I need to talk to you. Okay. And Dad too. Okay. Sit in the living room. They're discussing the Sixers for some odd reason. My mother didn't watch sports, but I think she had a crush on Allen Iverson, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, so they're watching the game. I make them turn it off, and I'm like, I have to tell you something, and it's very important. Okay. Mom, I'm gay. Okay. Did you say you had something to tell us? Yeah, that was it. Oh God. I hope you didn't think we didn't know. And I was like, I didn't know until like 6 months ago. And she's like, oh, Mary Frances, you could have called me. I would have told you. And I'm like, why did you tell me? I was like, why did you give me that rule when I went to college? She's like, I thought it might push it back a few years. I'm like, not psychological damaging at all. You're okay. And then she follows it up with, but what's that have to do with your hair? At which point my father, who had been silent up to that point, looks over and goes, well, Higgins, that's easy. It's because she's the butch. And then he just turns the TV on, and the conversation was over. And I was like, was there anything else you had to add? Or is that your hair though? Yeah, that was my mother. My mother's big obsession was what happened to my hair.
So the haircut was the bigger issue there.
Yeah, that was the bigger issue there.
I have to say, like, you're talking about the gender roles and rules and things like that. And I don't want to be like, oh, but straight people want, but we all kind of deal with that, because I don't think anyone is a perfect, stereotype. You know what I mean? I think some people are differently. Like I was wearing Birkenstocks when I was in college. Maybe I need to rethink a few things, but I mean, I was wearing those. I was going to see the Indigo Girls when I was 5 years old, 5 or 6. I remember going to the Einen. Do you remember Sugarman's up the line in the Einen with my brother, who was about 3 years older than me, and we were allowed to pick a toy. And I remember this just because it really did make an impact. I had a gun, like a plastic gun that when you pull the trigger, it just made some kind of noise. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget the woman checking us out said, oh, honey, don't you want a doll or something? And I'm like, nope, no, this is what I want. Because I had an older brother and we
Mhm.
played that way. And I mean, yes, I had dolls at home too, but we played, we played wrestling, as we got older.
Yeah.
He used to watch Superfly Snuka and all that stuff. And we played that. And, I didn't mind playing with toy guns and things like that. So I don't know. And I don't know. I'm not making it a point that's like brilliant because we all know that we shouldn't, whether you're straight or gay, there are stereotypes that we should be breaking and to let people be who they are, no matter, regardless.
Well, and that's where I think that this generation is absolutely better. And one of the coolest things is my goddaughter, um, my amazing niece, who I can't even imagine what they're going to accomplish in life. But I'm struck by them, and I told them this when they had come out as non-binary, is I will never forget. So I have a special needs nephew. He is great. He is an adult now. He works. He functions. And he's a great guy, but he, for some reason, when he was younger, every time I went to visit my sister, literally every single time I went to visit, he would say, Mario, because they all call me Mary. Mario, are you a boy or a girl? And I would always, and at the time, I would just be like, I'm a girl, Alex. It's okay, I'm a girl. And then next visit, same thing. Mario, you a boy? Finally, my niece was 7, and like no thought at all in their head. We're just sitting there coloring. Mary, are you a boy or a girl? And Kat just goes, both, and just continues coloring. And his response, Alex's response was, oh. And that's all it is. And I noticed that my grandson, Gavin, he struggles. He struggles. He calls me he occasionally because it's just in his head. And then he corrects himself and he'll say she, they, because he would say she, and then Kat talked to him about they, and he was just like, okay. So I think it's really just what we're conditioned for.
Mhm.
Like my grandkids, they understand. They know I'm not a dude, and they know that I'm not a girl in the same way that mommy's a girl and that Kiki's a girl. And they're just like, monkey is monkey. Like monkey just is. And I asked my granddaughter Julie one time, she was talking about purple shirts make you a girl, and green shirts make you a boy. This was a conversation. So I'm like, so if Gavin wore a purple shirt, that would make him a girl. Yes, it would. And then somebody else said something, and they were like, so is monkey a boy or a girl? And the way that she responded was, monkey's a girl. And they said, why? And because that's what they say they are. And I'm like, if that's like the easiest thing on earth for all of us to, like, when people lose their mind and they're like, how dare teachers use the pronouns that my child prefers if I use she in the household to try and beat them down. Like, it's like, if you look at kids, like the concept isn't that hard. It's just what we're conditioned for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think to that point, that's where I think patience and continuing conversation and work will take place, because isn't everything set up that way, right? Like
Yeah.
he, she, everything's set that way. So that needs to be kind of, I don't know, dismantled or changed or something. And the work will be in the coming now and the coming years. I mean, to kind of change things, which I think the younger generation, obviously they're very bright and they will do what they need to do. And they're already making changes, I think.
And that's the thing. I'm like, people your age, my age, it's like, if you mess up, just correct them. Just be like,
Yeah.
I had somebody at work. I don't even think about it. My default in describing myself is they, them. The world's default. And at this point, I'm old enough that, like, again, it doesn't, I don't take offense to it, because you accept me for who I am. What you call me is not the worst thing in the world. Like, I don't care what you call me. Just ask me to be in your show. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't care, because I'm not going to be like, oh, well, can't put Mary on the women's show. Can't. I don't care. Fit me in the lineup. That's what I want. Is that I just want undying affection from strangers. I don't care what they call me.
Oh, so
Or
you
the
really
entire
identify
stage.
it as a comic, right?
Yes,
As a needy
exactly.
comic, basically.
As the great Mario Cantone would say, a laugh whore. That's my
Yes.
gender is laugh whore.
Yep, yep, that's it. Laugh whore. Yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're like, I don't care what you call me, just invite me and then as a bonus, pay me.
Well, yeah, and that's always nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something that's sometimes elusive in the world of comedy and the
Yeah.
arts, right? But that's a whole
Exactly.
different conversation. We have talked for a while, and I know sometimes my listeners, like most people who go on the internet and things these days, have short attention spans. So I don't like to go too long. I would like to have you back because I feel like we could chat for a long time, and I would love to talk to you again about your comedy and just your, I don't want to say your process, but like how, who you are. And everybody writes best, or I think the funniest stuff comes from reality, right? From our own pain, from our own experiences. And I'm sure you use that, and I know you do in your stand up, and it's hilarious, I think. But talk to you more about that, and if you would do me the honor of coming back on another time.
It would always be a delight. I didn't realize that we were on this long, Miss Janine.
I see how easy it is to just kind of shoot the shit,
It
so to
is.
speak. It is.
It's
And
an hour of trying to figure out whether or not we should say they, them, or she, and we still haven't figured it out.
I'm sitting here with the dictionary and I don't know what the hell to do.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you. It's so easy to talk to you, and I really do hope that listeners listen every week. I say there's so much. My guests are fantastic, and I hope that they have listened to you, learned a little bit, laughed a little bit, and just take away something that they can put into their own lives. Or I think the main thing, like you said, don't it doesn't matter so much what you call you, as long as I think we need to just remember to be kind to people. And I know, like you said, maybe the younger generation gets a little more in a snit about the words, but I think actions are still truly the most important thing of how we treat one another. I don't know if you would agree, but I think that's kind of like we really need to be treating each other better than we are. And in many cases, I think.
I think there's nothing better that can be said than that.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I will end with, and just say, whether you call Mary he, she, or they, be kind to Mary, and appreciate Mary's talent, because Mary's a hoot. And before we close, do you have anything that you'd want to plug or promote where people can check you out?
Oh my goodness. Well, we don't have anything official lined up, although we are very excited. Scranton Improv and Comedy is we're looking at a lot of things, and we're looking to come back with a vengeance in 2022. Although we're going to be
Excellent.
doing some pop-ins prior to that. Also, for all of your people who are community and civic minded, the Ritz Foundation does have a trunk or treat on October 30th. If anybody has tons of candy they would like to donate, we are accepting that. I do work on with the Ritz Foundation, which helps to bring theater to children who might not otherwise qualify for the CAPA program. Or, of course, any baskets, donation, or money that you would like to send to help the children become equally as obsessed with the spotlight as me.
So they too can grow up to be laugh horrors.
Yes, exactly. It's just the circle of life.
Yes. And if they want to check out if they heard this, but they want to look into it on Facebook, it's is it under Ritz or is it under
It
Kappa?
is the Ritz. It's the Ritz Foundation or Kappa. They have both of those shared. And then, of course, Scranton Improv and Comedy is on Facebook and the world.
All right. Excellent. Well, I look forward to 2022 as well. Scranton Improv has done some great things. And I've been thrilled to participate in a couple of the shows and had a blast. And everybody you have there is hilarious, and it's always a good time. So I look forward to the future of doing that stuff again in person. That'll be nice. So we can all get together and laugh. We need it. God knows we need it. Everyone needs to laugh. And it doesn't matter how you identify, who you are. We all appreciate and benefit from laughter the same. So, well, thank you for listening. I want to thank Mary again for being my guest. I hope you will tune in again next week. This has been Janine Luby, aka Funny Wine Girl. You've been listening to Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl, and I hope you'll uncork something fabulous, be kind to one another, and enjoy.